They left me in the middle of the Nevada desert. No water, no phone, just an old hat and $20 in my wallet. On the windshield, my daughter-in-law had taped a crumpled note. Be independent, Dad. I watched their SUV speed away, dust swallowing the shadows of the family I once raised. I didn't know then. That cruel abandonment would be the beginning of a reckoning, one that would make every single one of them pay. Before I go on, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're listening from. My name's George Miller. I used to be a civil engineer, spent my whole life working for the state of New Mexico. I was never rich, but I had a small house on the outskirts of Santa Fe, the place I shared with my son Daniel and his wife Lena. After my wife passed away from cancer, Daniel begged me to move in with them, said he didn't want me to be alone. I believed him. I believed every word my kids ever said, but over the years I began to realize I wasn't really Dad in that house anymore. I was just an obstacle between them. Lena always acted polite in front of me, but her little remarks, "Dad, you should rest more, don't mess up the kitchen," or "old folks need their own space," slowly turned into open coldness. Daniel, my only son, never dared to go against her. He'd just look at me with pity, like I was some burden weighing them down. Last week they told me they were taking me on a weekend family trip to Nevada. Said it would help me clear my head. I was happy. At 70, it's rare when your kids invite you along. I even packed my blood pressure pills, some cash, and my old leather hat, the one my late wife gave me for my birthday. The road to Nevada was long and hot, but Daniel played upbeat music and Lena kept laughing and chatting. Everything seemed fine, until they stopped at a gas station in the middle of the desert. I went inside to buy some water and a few packs of jerky. When I came out, the SUV was still there, engine running, my 2 grandkids giggling in the back seat. I walked toward the car, but before I could open the door, Lena rolled down the window. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "Dad, we think it's time you learn to take care of yourself." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. She smiled. "You've relied on Daniel for too long. Today's a good day for you to live independently." Then she laughed and the car roared to life. "Lena, Daniel, don't joke like that," I shouted. But the sound of tires on sand drowned my words. The SUV vanished into the haze. I stood there alone, the desert wind howling like laughter. My phone was dead since morning. My wallet just 2 $10 bills left. I still thought they'd come back, that it was all just a prank. But an hour passed, then 2, and no one came. I started walking along the highway. The sun felt like it was melting the asphalt. Every 100 meters I had to stop to catch my breath. In my head I kept seeing their faces, Lena smiling, Daniel filming the kids laughing. Then somehow, I managed to power up my old phone using a half-dead power bank in my pocket. The first notification that popped up nearly made me drop it. Independent Old Man Challenge, 1.2 million views. I tapped it open. It was a video of them leaving me behind in the desert. Lena's voice in the background. "He'll be fine. He used to be an engineer. Who'd think a 70-year-old could be this helpless below?" Thousands of laughing comments. People mocking me. "Hope the old man learns his lesson," someone wrote. I sank to the ground. It felt like something tore open inside my chest. I don't know how long I sat there before a truck pulled over. The driver was a sunburned man, mid-40s maybe. He looked at me and asked, "You lost, sir?" I nodded. My voice came out rough. "I just want to go home." He drove me to a small gas station about 10 miles away. It belonged to a veteran named Calvin. He gave me water and listened quietly as I told him everything. When I mentioned the video, he stayed silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "They didn't just abandon you, sir. They erased your dignity." That night I sat outside the station watching the sunset bleed into the desert sky. I knew then that what they'd taken from me wasn't just money or trust. I had lost my family. But I'd found something far greater, my will to live, to fight to reclaim who I am. And from that moment on, I knew I'd never be that poor old man again. The next morning, I asked Calvin to drive me out to the highway so I could catch a bus back to Santa Fe. He pressed a bottle of water into my hand and said, "When you need help, just call. Not everyone gets back up after a fall like that, my friend." I nodded, didn't say a word. Comfort meant nothing to me then. All I could think about was getting home and finding out why my own son would do something like that. The ride took more than 8 hours. I sat by the window watching the dry land fade behind me, my mind empty. Every so often the laughter from that video echoed in my head, mixed with Lena's voice. He'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. And when I finally stepped into my house in Santa Fe, I realized it hadn't just been a cruel joke. The place was dark. The door wasn't locked. Everything looked untouched except for one thing. Everything that belonged to me was gone. The family photos, my pension documents, the watch my wife left me. All vanished. I ran upstairs, opened drawers empty, only a few crumpled bank receipts left behind. I plugged in my phone and waited for it to power up. When the screen lit, a flood of bank alerts popped up. Transfer, $38,000. Recipient, Daniel Miller. Ownership change confirmed for savings account. Contact information updated. My heart started pounding. $38,000, everything I'd saved for retirement. I called the bank. The woman on the line sounded cold, detached. "Mr. Miller, all transactions were legal. The authorization documents were signed by you." Authorization? I hadn't signed anything, except a medical form a few months ago when Lena said it was for health care consent, in case I ever fainted. That's when it hit me. They'd planned this. Every step. The Nevada trip wasn't some spontaneous cruelty. It was the finale of a long, careful plan. To erase me from my own life. I searched the house again and found a small USB drive left on Daniel's desk. I plugged it into the laptop. Within seconds, the screen filled with videos, photos, messages. One audio clip froze my blood. Lena's voice. "If the video of Dad goes viral, 500,000 views, we'll post part 2. Daniel, be careful. What if people find out it's my dad?" Lena laughed. "Nobody cares. The internet just wants views." Then the footage appeared. Me standing in the desert, my back to the camera, my grandkids laughing in the background. They'd edited it, added mocking captions and music. "Stubborn old man faces the ultimate survival challenge. Views 2.3 million. Comments, thousands of jokes, sneers, and laughing emojis. My stomach twisted. Cold sweat ran down my back. I printed everything, every file, every message, and put it in an envelope. At first I thought about confronting Daniel, but the more I thought about it, the more pointless it seemed. The boy I once taught to tie his shoes to drive a car had turned me into entertainment for strangers. I sat at the dining table. The house was silent, eerily silent. Outside, the Santa Fe sky broke into rain. Each drop hitting the window sounded like a reminder I'd lost everything: my money, my dignity, my faith in family. That night I lay on the old couch in the living room. Sleep never came. Instead, I saw my wife's face in my mind. She once told me, "If the day ever comes when your children forget, you don't beg for love. Let justice teach them." I hadn't understood those words back then. Now, I did. The next morning I went to the bank to verify the documents. The manager, a woman in her 40s, looked at me with pity. "Mr. George, the authorization form has your signature." And the witness was Lena Miller. I asked quietly. "And if that signature's fake?" She hesitated. "Then we'd need a court investigation. But honestly, the chances of winning are very low." I thanked her and left. Outside, a flyer was taped to the wall: mental health clinic, support for depressed seniors. I couldn't help but laugh. That's exactly what Lena would say if someone asked, "Where's George?" "Oh, he's just not well." I went back home, gathered some clothes, a few papers that were still mine. Before leaving, I stood in the middle of the living room, once filled with family laughter, and I whispered, "All right. You want me to be independent? I'll show you what independence really means. I put on my old jacket, grabbed my bag, and stepped out into the open air. This time, no one abandoned me. I left on my own to begin a new journey, a journey to reclaim the dignity they stole. I left Santa Fe on a gray morning. The sky felt like it might break. My old suitcase felt unusually light, only a few clothes and the papers I'd gathered. For the first time in 70 years, I had no plan. No idea where I'd sleep that night. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going back. I headed west to Flagstaff, Arizona, a small town of pines and red rock. I'd worked near here years ago as a bridge engineer. Quiet place. Nobody here knew me. Nobody here cared about that humiliating video. I wanted to disappear, at least for a while. Thanks to a few old contacts, I found temp work at Calvin's garage, the same man who'd helped me at the gas station. He looked surprised to see me. "I thought you'd go home and fight," he said. I only smiled. "Not yet, Calvin. Battles can't be won while you're still bleeding." He nodded. Didn't pry. The garage work was hard for a man my age, oil changes, fixing engines, cleaning the parts room. But the sound of engines, the smell of oil and sweat, it made me feel alive. Nights I slept in the small room behind the shop, ate cold bread, drank weak coffee. I didn't follow the news. I stayed off the internet. I needed quiet. I needed to hear myself think. Then one night, while Calvin watched TV in the office, I caught a brief news flash. Elderly man from independent old man challenge still missing. Family fears he may have died in the desert. The photo on screen was of me, an old picture, my smile stiff. The caption below read, "Son calls for search. My father has a history of mental health issues. We hope he returns safely." I sat frozen. They hadn't stopped. Now they were trying to paint me as unwell, to cover their own crimes. I couldn't stay silent, but to fight them I needed proof. And more importantly, I needed to know how to use it. So I learned. Every night after work, I went to the city library. I read about property rights, elder abuse, and how to bring civil claims for theft and fraud. The more I read, the hotter the fire inside me burned. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd stolen my dignity, the last thing I had left. 3 months later, I had a plan. I hired a young lawyer, Evelyn Grant. She was the daughter of an old acquaintance. When I told her the story, she listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Mr. George, you don't fight them with fists. We'll use the truth." I handed over everything: USB drives, bank statements, printed videos, text, screenshots I'd saved. Evelyn looked through it all and said, "This is enough to open a civil investigation. But if you want them to really fall, let them dig their own grave." We started collecting more evidence. Evelyn hired a private investigator to follow Lena and Daniel. Weeks later, we learned Lena kept posting videos. She used the challenge to market her channel. She took sponsorships. She was earning thousands a month by retelling how she'd taught her father to be independent. I watched interviews of her smiling into cameras, saying George is probably happy somewhere, learning to live a new way. That line chilled me. No remorse. If I stayed quiet, they'd keep performing, keep trampling me. Evelyn looked me in the eye, steady. "It's time for you to come back. Not to beg, to reclaim your right to exist as a person." I nodded. I had waited for this moment. I wrote one short letter, one line. "You told me to learn how to be independent." I did. Then I mailed a package with all the evidence to Daniel. The return address, Flagstaff Post Office. 3 days later, the press picked it up. Police began investigating financial fraud and elder abuse against a Santa Fe couple. Lena deleted her social accounts. Daniel was held for questioning. I sat outside the garage, watching the sunset paint the mountains red. For the first time in months, a weight lifted from my chest. I knew this wasn't the end, but the real fight had begun. That morning, I got a call from Evelyn. Her voice was steady but firm. "Mr. George, they've filed a counterclaim. They're saying you're mentally unstable, that you signed over your assets yourself, then wandered off." I was silent for a few seconds, then laughed softly. That kind of role reversal, that's exactly what Lena had always done. Twist the truth until it looked like virtue. But not this time. This time they wouldn't get to rewrite the story. Evelyn told me the court had approved a public hearing in Albuquerque, and she wanted me there. "It's time for you to speak for yourself, Mr. George." I hung up and looked out the garage window. Morning sunlight spilled across rows of dusty cars. Calvin walked over and tossed me a cap. "Go get him, old man. You don't get many chances to win back your honor." 2 weeks later, I stood inside the courthouse. I wore my old suit, freshly pressed, and polished shoes. In the mirror, I saw a 70-year-old man, lines deep, but eyes still burning. I came with no one but Evelyn. That was enough. When we entered the courtroom, Lena and Daniel were already seated across from us, with some slick young attorney by their side. They looked more worn down than I expected, probably from the investigations and the backlash online. But when our eyes met, I still saw the same arrogance. Daniel looked away. Lena's lips tightened into a thin, cold smile. The hearing began. Their lawyer spoke first, claiming Mr. George Miller is elderly, forgetful, and voluntarily signed over his property. He now exhibits signs of mental instability. I listened, heartbeat steady. Each word felt like a knife, but I let them talk. The longer they spoke, the clearer the truth would sound when it came. Then Evelyn stood. She didn't raise her voice. She simply laid a thick folder on the table. "Your Honor, these documents tell a very different story." She showed screenshots of the live stream, the laughter, the mocking voices as they abandoned me in the desert, then the bank statements showing irregular transfers, and finally the USB drive, the one holding every recording I'd given her. When the video played, the room fell silent. Lena's voice echoed, "He'll be fine. He used to be an engineer, remember?" Then came the laughter, sharp, cruel, cutting through the desert wind. Around me I saw reporters writing quickly, a few people in the audience shaking their heads. Evelyn spoke clearly. This wasn't a prank. This was deliberate humiliation and elder abuse. Their attorney jumped in, claiming it was a stage performance for entertainment. But Evelyn was ready. She held up a photo from social media, Lena raising a glass in a Santa Fe bar that same night, captioned, "Freedom feels amazing," with a laughing emoji. If they were worried about their father, Evelyn said, would they be celebrating? Hashtagging for profit. Lena bowed her head, shoulders trembling. Daniel sat frozen pale as paper. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, his voice cracked. We didn't think it would go that far." I said nothing. Excuses were just wind by then. The hearing lasted until afternoon. When the judge finally turned to me, he asked, "Mr. Miller, do you wish to say anything before the ruling?" I rose to my feet. My hands shook slightly, but my voice was steady. I didn't come here for the money. I came to reclaim my dignity, the thing they took with a smile and a camera. I used to think family meant respect. But today I've learned respect doesn't come from blood. It comes from how we treat each other. The room went silent. The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." Then he read the verdict. Mr. George Miller is reinstated as sole owner of all assets. Legal fees to be covered by the defendants. Lena Miller found guilty of elder abuse, sentenced to probation, and barred from contact. Daniel Miller, stripped of inheritance, ordered to return all misappropriated funds. When the gavel struck, I didn't feel joy, just a long, quiet calm. Evelyn smiled, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Mr. George. You won." I nodded. No, I just took back what never should have been lost. As we stepped into the hallway, Lena was waiting. She trembled. "Dad, I'm sorry, I didn't mean." Evelyn stepped forward firm. "Mrs. Miller, the court forbids contact. Step back." I looked at Lena one last time. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to yourself for turning your heart into a stage prop." Then I turned away and walked out. The Albuquerque sunlight hit the pavement so bright I had to squint. It felt strange, like for the first time in my life I was truly free. 3 years after the trial, I still wake early. I brew a cup of black coffee and open the door to watch the sunrise spill over the Colorado Springs mountains. The little house I bought with the money I reclaimed isn't fancy, but every brick, every piece of wood, I fixed myself. A quiet proof that I still have value. Since that time, I've left the noise behind. I keep in touch only with a few who truly understand me. Evelyn drops by sometimes bringing stacks of new documents about Desert Fathers, the fund we started to help seniors facing abuse. I never imagined that at 75 I'd begin a new mission, but maybe the deepest wounds are what make us rise strongest. News about Lena and Daniel still pops up occasionally. Lena got fired after her probation for elder abuse came to light. She tried to start a small social channel, but no one cared anymore. Her audience had turned away. Daniel left Santa Fe divorced, and now lives quietly in a small town in southern Texas. I don't feel anger toward them anymore, only sorrow. A family once full of love, shattered by pride and selfishness. One early summer afternoon, I received a handwritten letter from Daniel. The handwriting shaky, Dad. I know an apology now means nothing, but every time I look at my son, I think of you, the man I made lose everything. If I could, I'd like to see you just once. I read it again and again. No anger, no rush to reply. Forgiveness is easy to say, harder to mean. I folded the letter, placed it in my desk, and whispered, "Maybe one day, Daniel, but not today." Desert Fathers grew steadily. We helped seniors fight for their rights, reclaim stolen property, and most importantly, find their voice. Every grateful look reminds me of that day in the desert. The emptiness, shame, despair. It's still there, but now only as a memory. A memory that tells me I survived and learned to stand again. One late afternoon, while going through files in the office, Evelyn asked, "Do you regret it? If you'd forgiven sooner, maybe things would have been different." I looked out the window, sunlight spilling golden across the pines. No, girl. If they hadn't left me in the desert, I'd have died slowly in quiet submission. That fall saved me. That night, I drove alone back to Nevada. I wanted to return to where it all began, the old gas station in the desert. The road was long and silent, only the wind whistling through the windows and moonlight on the asphalt. When I arrived, the station had long since closed. The sign hung rusted, swinging in the wind. I stepped out, drew a deep breath. No fear this time, only freedom. I stood on the same patch of land where I'd once been abandoned, looking toward the fading horizon. The desert wind whipped up dust, but this time I didn't close my eyes. I let it hit my face, let the sand touch my skin, a cleansing of the past. In my hand was the old phone, still holding that video from years ago. I opened it one last time. There I was, thin, alone, the harsh sunlight on my back. Laughter mocking me in the background, but I didn't feel shame anymore. I saw a man beginning his journey to freedom, unknown to anyone. I pressed delete, then threw the phone into the sand. The wind took it, burying it slowly beneath golden dust. I turned toward my car. The sun was setting, painting the horizon in fiery reds just like that day, but it felt different now. As I started the engine, I glanced in the rearview mirror. No longer the betrayed old man, just a survivor smiling. I turned on the headlights and drove straight ahead. I don't know how many years I have left, but the ones I do will be mine. Free, at peace, and owing nothing to anyone. If you followed my story this far, thank you, truly. Like, share, and subscribe to catch the next stories.